Hey everybody, this is ScottHill92, and I just finished playing through Bioshock Infinite today. It was a pretty decent game. A lot of my friends have been saying it's the best game they've ever played. I tend to disagree. Also, before I go further, I want everybody to know that there are some pretty extreme spoilers in this video. So if you don't want the game ruined for you, turn back now and come back later. So without further ado, let's go into my review of Bioshock Infinite. So first of all, we're going to talk about my first problem with the game, which is the setting. Alright, so comparing the setting of Bioshock Infinite to the setting of Bioshock 1. So Bioshock 1, we have Rapture, which is this, sprawling underwater metropolis. Bioshock Infinite, we have Columbia, the floating city. And so, yeah, I mean, both of them are both equally amazing and fantastic kind of settings for the Bioshock story, and that's not really where I had problems. Let's just continue on. So we've got the cities, and what about the residents of these cities? So in Bioshock 1, in Rapture, everybody's either dead, has left, or has become a splicer, where they've, injected themselves with these plasmids and Eve hypos and stuff, and Adam, up until the point where they pretty much lose their humanity and become insane and violent. The residents of Columbia, however, are mostly snobby white people, and there's a lot of them. Who else helps you progress the story? Because obviously the enemies or the background NPCs don't really help you progress the story. So who else is left in each of these settings to progress the story? We have only a few people in Rapture. We have, Tenenbaum and Atlas and people like that, and all the people you meet in Rapture have these ulterior motives, and you're not sure if they're actually trying to help you or if they're manipulating you and using you as their pawn. However, in Bioshock Infinite, either the game blatantly tells you that people are using you as their pawn, or you can just you just know. They're like, oh, this guy's gonna double cross me or whatever. And it's not like there's a shortage of people around. It's not like there's anything in Columbia, whereas, in Rapture, if somebody starts talking to you, they're a big deal because there aren't any people around. We have Bioshock 1 in Rapture. There aren't very many people around. You're completely underwater. You feel utterly alone and abandoned. You feel like you're the only person on your side. And in Bioshock Infinite, I guess you could say at worst you just feel like you're out of place, that you don't belong in Columbia. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the environment with problem number 2. So now we're diving deeper into the environment and the environmental setting behind Infinite. So Bioshock 1, you're in the ruins of a city on the sea floor. You get the feeling that there is no escape, that you can't just, turn around and leave. You can't get out. Because you're in a ruined city. Everything's in disrepair, everything's broken. It's not like you could just turn around, hop on a barge, and get out of there. Like in Columbia, in Bioshock Infinite, you're on a city in the sky. Yeah, there's no immediate escape. You can't just, walk out a door and be done. You can't jump off of a ledge and be out of there. But, it's fully functioning. It's fully populated. You almost get the sense, like, why do I need to escape? I could live here, whatever, it's weird that there's, just a bunch of white people, but whatever, I could live here. It's like Great Falls, Montana. Bioshock 1, back in Rapture, the walls are groaning and creaking, the pipes are leaking water into the halls. At any moment, the hallways could collapse, cave in on themselves, and you could have, the entire ocean pour in. You feel completely trapped. You feel like the walls are closing in around you. Lights are flickering on and off, and sometimes the lights will shut off and leave a player in utter darkness. You feel alone. You're left in the dark. You're abandoned, and it's dark and it's silent. And that's the most unnerving part about Bioshock 1 and being in Rapture, is when the lights go out and everything is dead silent. And then all of a sudden you hear scraping on the wall or something. and that scraping is a splicer, you know, dragging his knife or his hook or whatever across the wall as he runs toward you. The splicers added such an intense, terrifying aspect to Rapture, because, you know, the lights go out and then you just hear laughing, like maniac laughing, or you hear, you know, crying in the background, like somebody just sobbing, and then you see somebody sitting, like wearing a mask, like a masquerade mask, and they're sitting there with their hands in their face bawling, and when you get close to them they turn and they just scream and start wailing on you with a pipe wrench, and it's terrifying. You jump out of your skin. You know, there were times when I played through Bioshock 1 that I had to shut off the Xbox and walk away for a while because it scared the shit out of me, and I was like, if I don't stop playing now, I'm gonna have nightmares. Bioshock Infinite, I mean, there's really not any times where you're left alone in the dark or in the silence for too long. And, you know, really the only shitty thing about Columbia is the fact that, you know, there's all the racism and religious fanaticism. There's no unnerving enemies. The enemies are all very straightforward, just a bunch of guys with guns shooting at you that you run around and kill. I mean, it's not very unnerving playing Infinite. You know, you play Infinite and it feels like just another supernatural powered shooter where, you know, you have a gun in one hand and superpowers in the other where you can throw fire or whatever, like Dishonored. One of the other things about Bioshock Infinite when you're playing, you know, there are situations that could have been so suspenseful and so intense and just nerve-wracking for the player, where, you know, the lights kind of flicker on and off in some points and it goes dark for a few seconds, but all of that is diffused entirely by the conversation going on between Booker and Elizabeth. Now, I'm not saying that this is a problem because it really helps build those characters. That's not the problem. The problem is, you know, they talk at inopportune times sometimes, and there are some parts that I felt that they start talking when it could have been a really intense or stressful situation for the player, and it could have really kind of amped up that tension factor that the first Bioshock has that Infinite is lacking. The point I'm trying to make here, Bioshock 1 and Rapture, unnerving as shit. The suspense and tension in that game, I would give an A+. And then we jump over to Bioshock Infinite. Suspense and tension, I'm going to give a D-. It's not that great. Next on the list, problem number 3, we have the gameplay. Now, we have the gameplay of Bioshock Infinite that I'm comparing once again to Bioshock 1. Bioshock 1, it felt a lot more than just like a run-and-gun shooter, a superpowered shooter. Your powers did more than just kill things. Your plasmids opened doorways, cleared debris, etc., etc. There was a side mission sequence where you had to go find the fire plasmid so that you could melt ice in front of certain doorways to proceed to the next area. In Infinite, you run and gun. You use your powers to kill stuff. I believe you use your powers in Infinite twice. When you get the shock jockey power, I believe you use it to power up a gate, and then you use it to power up a gondola. And both of those happen within like 5 minutes of gameplay. It's in the same mission sequence. And that's the only time you really ever use your powers outside of a combat situation, which was a little disappointing because they gave us some really cool powers. The murder of crows, the shock jockey, charge. In Bioshock 1, you had hacking, you had security bypasses, you could hack drones to have them help you fight, you could do a security bypass on safes and on vending machines so that you would get a discount or that you could find the items inside the safe or whatever. And it made it a little bit more interesting than just a simple shooter. In Bioshock Infinite, the closest thing you have to that is the power of possession, where you can take over the gun turrets for a short period of time. Elizabeth can also open tears that have gun turrets that fight for you, and then to like bypass security things like locks, you just kind of click a button and say, Elizabeth, go do this for me. which was a little bit boring. It was just kind of a point and click, and then have Elizabeth do it for you, and it really dumbed down the fact that Bioshock Infinite really is just a shooter. In Infinite, the gameplay and the combat plays a lot like Dishonored. You're slinging powers, shooting people, jumping up onto the rail lines and sliding around and jumping off and murdering people with your little spinny hook weapon thing. And it's great. It's fun. But it plays a lot like Dishonored, and it's just a lot less satisfying. Dishonored, I don't know, whatever it was about that game, you feel like a total fucking badass when you jump from a building and slice a dude's throat. Infinite has that potential because you're sliding on a rail with this hook thing, and you jump off and you club a guy across the face with it, or you hit a guy and then you drill through his freaking jugular vein with your hook hand thing, and it all looks kind of fun and it's flashy, but it doesn't feel as satisfying as Dishonored's combat was, which was a little disappointing as well. Going back to things that made it a little bit not like a just superpower shooter, in Bioshock 1, kind of with Dishonored has a lot of stealth elements and stuff. It's not just run in and kill everything. You can do that. In Bioshock 1, it wasn't about just running in and, guns blazing and killing everything. There were alarms and security cameras and like lights and stuff that revealed you, and you could use stealth to get past areas and not have to fight combat drones and all kinds of stuff like that. You could rewire cameras so that they would target splicers, and then they would send security drones to kill the splicers instead of you. The weapons. In Bioshock 1, you were able to carry all of your weapons. You had a wheel, which they could have done because the right bumper, I'm playing Xbox, the right bumper switches between your weapons, but if you hold it down, nothing happens. So they could have easily programmed that same system where you could carry all these weapons. Maybe it's not realistic. If they could have classifications for weapons, and maybe you could carry 4 types of weapons: a pistol, a rifle, a shotgun, and a special weapon. I would have been okay with that. The thing is, you spend a lot of money in-game to upgrade these weapons, to get weapon mods for them. After you drop your fully upgraded carbine for an under-upgraded machine gun, 20 minutes later you're like, oh look, a carbine again. I remember I spent all that money upgrading it. Maybe I should use that again. I mean, it's a little lame that you can't carry more than just the 2 weapons, especially since they do have that aspect where you're upgrading and modifying those weapons to be better, because then you don't have any incentive to drop weapons and try out new ones after you start buying upgrades. So what I did is I just fully upgraded the carbine and carried the carbine and the hand cannon, the revolver, around with me the whole game, and I played the entire campaign with those 2 weapons because, I mean, what's the point of picking up other guns? We now move on to my 4th problem with Bioshock Infinite, which is the enemies. The enemies between Bioshock 1 and Bioshock Infinite are very different, and this is going to be a really short segment. I'm just going to say the splicers in the first Bioshock game really helped add to the environment and the suspense and the tension of the game, because you had these insane maniac people, maniacal people running around with hooks in their hands, scraping on walls and laughing and screaming at you, charging at you from the darkness and trying to maul you and kill you or do whatever. And in Bioshock Infinite, the majority of your enemies are just guys with guns. There isn't a lot of fear factor in the enemies in Bioshock Infinite. The Patriots were pretty cool. They were a pretty cool addition. I will say that I like them a lot. They were pretty neat. They got old after a while because after you encountered the first one, it seemed like every combat encounter had at least one of those guys in it, which was a little lame and kind of boring. There wasn't really an enemy that was like the Big Daddy that, instilled fear, and you only fought them if you really chose to. And I don't know, it felt to me like there weren't any special unique enemies that were like the Big Daddy in the first Bioshock, where the Big Daddy, you see one walking around and you have to make sure all your guns have armor-piercing ammo and all your guns are fully loaded, and you have a full thing of Eve at your disposal and a lot of health elixirs, otherwise you're screwed. With Infinite, I mean, the biggest enemies you fight get thrown at you against against your will. You don't get to choose to fight them. Which is the Handyman, the Patriot, and really those are the two big ones. The Handyman and the Patriot are like the closest thing to Big Daddies, which was a little disappointing. The guy you saw on the little caption, he was a really neat enemy. You only saw him for about 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay. I thought it was really cool, and he was the only enemy that actually I found myself dreading when I saw them, because when you see one of those, you realize you have to fight a whole horde of pretty tough guys wearing wearing masks of our forefathers, and they're pretty, it's kind of a scary scenario. Just a bunch of guys in masks coming at you with pipes hitting you kind of reminded me of Bioshock 1 a little bit. And there's actually a point in the game where one of those horn-headed guys causes a jump scare, and it was actually really well done, really well executed. I'm not going to spoil exactly where it is. You'll probably know if you're watching this video anyway, because I'm going to alert everyone with this video that there's a lot of spoilers. I don't want anybody to see this video if they have not played the game. He was the scariest enemy in the game, and it made me pretty sad that you only saw him for 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay. And now we get to problem number 5, the story. Alright, so we're going to be talking about problem number 5, which is the story of Bioshock Infinite. And my problem with the story was that I really didn't have a problem with the story, actually. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was a pretty well put together story, and it was fun to play through. Without spoiling too much, I'm going to say that I totally called the 2 major twists at the very end. We now come to the final part, number 6, the verdict. Overall, I'm going to give Bioshock Infinite a 3.5 to 4 stars out of 5. I'm still on the fence. Maybe we should give it a 3.75 until I can decide further. I had a great story. I just had some problems with the gameplay. Maybe I'm being too hard on it. Maybe I'm comparing it too strongly against Bioshock 1. Who knows? They are 2 completely different games, but they do share a name of the franchise, and I was hoping they'd be a little more similar than they were. Having said all that, I believe that's the end of my review of Bioshock Infinite, 3.75 stars out of 5. So if you guys want to play it and let me know what you think, I'd think that's pretty cool. And remember to comment, like, and subscribe to show your support for my videos, and I'll probably be doing another game review soon. So I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll see you guys next time.